Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome to this special interview with His Excellency Andrew Noble, British Ambassador to Algeria. Your Excellency, thank you so much for having us at your lovely residence today and for taking the time to sit with us today. Your Excellency, you've been Ambassador to Algeria since June 2014. Could you give us a broad overview of the realities of the Algerian-British bilateral relations before we delve into the specificalities?
Yeah, well, I think it's a relationship that's growing. When my Prime Minister came here in January 2013 and had extensive talks with the President of the Republic, I think they found that there was a relationship that was much less than it should be between two such large and important countries. So my first 6 months here have been about developing that relationship on all fronts, and then particularly in the areas that they specified, which is security cooperation, our economic relationship, in English language promotion, and everything else that fills in the gaps.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of economic relationships, Excellency, what do you think is the most important sector that British investors are present today in Algeria?
Well, the biggest sector is oil and gas in all its forms, and that has been the case for over 50 years. And it was 50 years last month, since BP took the first shipment of liquefied natural gas to the UK. So we've got a very long tradition there, and we've got companies upstream, downstream, supply chain, and that's all very successful. Financial services are probably the second biggest area, and pharmaceuticals are a part of it as well. But everything can be developed.
Mm-hmm. Your Excellency, the political situation in each country would dictate the realities of the economic partnership that exists between those countries. Would you agree with that statement?
Yeah, but it's a very broad statement. I'm not sure what you mean by it.
I mean, the political realities in each country dictates the sectors in which economic relationships are strengthened. The energy sector is the most important one, and the British presence in Algeria is more prevalent in the energy sector. Would you think that has anything to do with politics? Not
desperately, no. Sorry to disagree, but I mean, I think it's the area that we started in. It was one of the areas where Algeria was probably open to international cooperation at an earlier stage. I think the factors which have led to the UK not particularly expanding beyond that are quite interesting, and not particularly ones that I'm proud of. I mean, I think there's been a real reticence by British companies about coming to Algeria, and often for not very good reasons. I mean, I think there has been a prevailing view that Algeria was a country that was left to the French, and we know that that's not true. I don't think it's ever been true since 1962, but that is a perception that has been around in the UK. I think the French language for some has been an inhibition, but I'm happy to say that there are companies in all sectors who have had a more intelligent understanding of the unique opportunities in a unique country. So that is all expanding, and I don't think it's anything about Algeria itself that has led to that. Rather, that predominance of cooperation on oil and gas. I think plenty of our competitors have had a much broader understanding of Algeria, and that's where what we are working towards now.
Mm-hmm. We'll certainly come back to that later, but before, on the upcoming 10th of December, there's going to be the Conference for Investment in Algeria. It's going to be presided by both Prime Ministers, Abdelmalek Sellal and David Cameron. Could you tell us more about the importance of this event?
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to be presided over by both Prime Ministers. There will be a meeting between both Prime Ministers. No, our Prime Minister will not be at the conference. I mean, the conference is primarily an opportunity for Algeria to speak to the business community in the UK.
Would you think that would change the way the UK sees Algeria in terms of other sectors, promoting other sectors other than the hydrocarbon sector?
That's the intention. And what we want to do, and we've been working very closely with my opposite number in London, with the Algerian government here, and with the conference organiser in London, to ensure that we have a conference which demonstrates past successes and demonstrates present and future opportunities. So it's primarily for the Algerian ministers who are there and the heads of significant Algerian entities like Sonatrach and Sonelgaz and others to demonstrate what options are available. And there's going to be a very large private sector presence from the UK. And I'm happy to say a significant presence of the private sector in Algeria. So there will be an opportunity for businessmen to speak to each other about the opportunities that they perceive in each other's country. So it should be a very two-way event. Prime Minister Sellal will meet my Prime Minister the following day in London, and they will have a broader discussion of both economic and, I assume, some security questions as well. So David Cameron won't actually be at the conference itself. The government will be strongly present at cabinet level, and it's very important for the UK that this partnership is genuinely a partnership. It's not a one-way relationship. So our government will be supporting it very, very strongly indeed.
Can we expect some concrete partnership deals at the end of the conference, Your Excellency?
Well, partnership deals take a little while. There are some in a very advanced stage of negotiation. Will they get to signature by a week today? I don't know. That's certainly the hope. There is certainly going to be a signature of the double taxation agreement, which is a hugely important means of allowing British companies to have the same sort of business terms as many other European countries already have. That will be levelling the playing fields for British companies. And that will be that's removing one of the obstacles from their work in Algeria. That's going to be important. There are going to be some MOUs signed as well on other areas outside oil and gas. So I think there will be some concrete deliverables, as well as what is intended to be the start of a lot of relationships with companies who've never been to Algeria before. And I'm looking forward to receiving them in this House when they come on trade missions or on individual visits in 2015.
Mm-hmm. Hopefully, Your Excellency.
Inshallah.
Can we say this is, inshallah, can we say this is the most important Algerian delegation to ever visit the UK, or is it an overstatement?
It's probably the biggest. I don't think it's the most important because the President was there in 2006 when he met the Queen at Buckingham Palace, and there were a number of important bilateral treaties signed on that occasion. So that was hugely important. And that really is the start, I think, of the modern UK-Algeria relationship after the stopping of a relationship really in that tragic decade in the 90s. So President Bouteflika's visit is where everything starts. And then last year, President Bouteflika with David Cameron gave it renewed impetus. And this visit is partly the result of January's discussions and partly pushing it further forward.
Mm-hmm. Your Excellency, Investment Minister Abdeslam Bouchouareb has openly called for more British investment in Algeria outside of the hydrocarbon sector. What do you think about this?
Absolutely right. We entirely share that perspective.
Mm-hmm. But British Petroleum is now, it's a fact, it's the biggest British investor in Algeria today, and it's working in the hydrocarbon sector. So it's not going anywhere. It can only go up from here. So the hydrocarbon investment is strong and it can only go stronger. What about other sectors? This is what we Algerians want to see. What about other sectors?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of progress been made in health over the last couple of years, and I think health is going to be one of the areas where we see most concrete output on the 10th of December. We're expecting a number of British health practitioners to sign public documents with the Algerian government. Agriculture is just starting. There's a very important investment that we're looking forward to being made to the south of Gadaia in milk production. In the whole construction field, there's an awful lot that we can do. Brits are very good at project management, at ensuring that high-level policies that the government is seeking to implement can be implemented throughout the lifetime, not just of building a a hospital or a port or whatever it is, but actually in the implementation of it as well. Defence and security is important. There are hopes that tourism could be part of it. Retail, food and agriculture, really no limit, I think. I mean, what would you say were Algeria's, how is Algeria seeking to develop? How is Algeria seeking to modernise and diversify? We know from the government what the plans are. I think in all of those areas there are British companies who in the past might not have looked at the opportunities here, and that's what we want to use this conference to do, to sort of link them in to the modern reality.
About that, Your Excellency, we know that the Algerian market is probably one of the biggest markets in the region, in the MENA region, or in Africa as a whole. And the Algerian consumer has a particular interest in British goods. British goods are very well reputed. So the British investors have almost a guaranteed win in the Algerian market. Why is that they're not as present as they should be? Is it the government's fault? Is it what can we do to bring them in?
Well, I don't know the individual answer to that because it will vary from country to company to company, and I think their business planning will be slightly more complex. So I think guaranteed profitability isn't necessarily the case for all of them. This is already a sophisticated market with lots of existing suppliers, so it's not a white sheet of paper. It is competitive, and to an extent, companies haven't made the basic investment of coming here and understanding the size of the market. Others have. So again, the investment conference is there to say, come to Algeria. Algeria is open for business. Come and look, and that way you can work out what the options are.
Mm-hmm. Your Excellency, whose initiative was that to hold the conference on the 10th of December? Is it Algerian or British?
Well, it's one of those things where success has many parents, and I could give you quite a list of people who think it was their idea. Okay,
fair enough.
I think the reality is that it's the product of a lot of people on both sides working together. And the idea was first had 2 years ago, I think, by a member of my team. Lord Risby, the Prime Minister's trade envoy, has been hugely influential in saying to everybody, this sort of event could really make a difference. And as the months have gone on, there has been more and more buy-in to that. Lord Risby talked about it with Prime Minister Salal in June, when the Lord Mayor of London was here. And I think that put real impetus into the idea. And we've been delivering it over the last 6 months, and I'm delighted and excited to say I think it's going to be a real success. The number of British businessmen at a very senior level who will be present is really quite exciting.
Okay, Your Excellency, we've seen quite a good number of trade missions, British trade missions, come and go to Algeria during the past few years, but we've seen quite a few concrete deals of partnership. What is your diagnosis? Why is that?
You mean not many?
Not many.
I'm not sure I entirely agree. I think sometimes the timeline to go from initial visit to contract signature and delivery can be quite long. I'm aware of a lot of negotiations continuing at the moment in a whole range of sectors. So, I mean, our trade last year was 60% higher than the preceding year. I mean, that in itself is quite a good effect to create. I'm not sure we're going to maintain that trend this year. There's some lumpiness always in trade statistics.
Why is that, Your Excellency?
Well, lumpiness. I think I think last year there were still some very big defence contracts that were being delivered that came to a natural end once that product had been delivered. But this year, the whole of the 6 months I've been here so far, I don't think there have been many contract signatures, but I'm very aware of a lot of people negotiating very hard, and there's a lot which is within easy reach. And it's, we're not doing this to sort of win competitions, to sort of be the best or the sort of highest placed in the trade statistics. It's about partnership. I think some of the things that are being negotiated are really quite complex. Some of the discussions about long-term training packages for Algerian industry take quite a lot of time actually to understand what Algerian requirements are, and then how can they be best met in a very cost-effective way. So I'm not pressing anybody for speed in its own sake. The important thing is that we come up with the right products that serve Algerian needs and are helpful to British businesses who need to make a profit after all.
Mm-hmm. Your Excellency, what would you say is the biggest obstacle that British investors face when wanting to invest in Algeria?
Do you mean the ones who actually come here?
The ones who come here, yes. The ones who come here, or the ones who are in the phase of negotiations?
Well, I think the ones who come here and the ones who do business, the ones who are psychologically able to turn obstacles into opportunities. I'm not sure it's easy to generalise. I think the people who have done business in the past find it easier to do a second amount of business. They are used to working in the way that Algerians work. And
what about those who never did business before?
Well, I think for the problem there is getting them here in the first place. We had 13 British businesses in this house on Sunday night for a reception for them to meet Algerian business partners. And that's the fourth such mission in my first 6 months, which is a pretty good strike rate. I mean, it's already an indication of a lot of interest. And they had 3 packed days of conversations around Algeria, and very many of them have stayed on longer to pursue the relationships that they started in those first 3 days. So, I mean, the biggest obstacle is choice, in a way. You know, Algeria has got lots of people coming here to sell goods and services and to invest in partnership. I suspect it's the strength of competition, which is the single biggest obstacle that I'm aware of.
Mm-hmm. Would you say the security situation, Your Excellency, still scares away some British investors?
Well, I hope not. I mean, we've made very clear through our travel advice to British citizens where we see security being a real factor. And our travel advice advises people to stay away from the border areas with Mali and Libya. It advises against all but essential travel to another area. And for the rest of the country, you know, probably several million square kilometres.
It's quite a big country.
It's quite a big country.
Yes.
The majority of the country is not covered by any particular security advice other than to be vigilant, to be aware, to maintain your own security, as you need to in almost every country in the world, and certainly as you need to in the UK. So there is a terrorist risk in this country, as there is in the UK. British companies are used to that. We have dealt with indigenous terrorism for 40 years or more. We haven't had the tragic level of terrorism that you had in Algeria. But I think our businessmen are quite wise people. So I don't think security shouldn't, for any of them, be the thing that really holds them back. And as you say, BP has a very significant investment in this country, including in the red areas. So everywhere you can mitigate risk. If you're working in a very high-risk environment, you need to take more security measures. And that's why we're very dependent on the security dialogue that we have with the Algerian government as well, for the protection of that sort of investment.
We'll get to that later when we go to the political side. Your Excellency, a lot of controversy and criticism has been made during the Algerian investment policy, that is the 51-49 rule. So what do you have to say about that? A lot of investors have shied away from coming to Algeria because of that rule or policy. What do you say about it?
Some may have. Some may have used it as an excuse because they never intended to come in the first place. And some have made a real go of it. One of the deals that I hope will be ripe by the 10th of December is for a brand new significant investment with joint venture partner, which shows a very creative way of coping within that policy framework. So I don't think it actually presents an obstacle.
Would you like to see it changed, Your Excellency?
I am not a businessman. I'm a diplomat.
On behalf of the British businessmen?
Well, I don't have a view, really. I mean, I think, you know, when British companies go to any country in the world, there's a national framework.
To adapt to.
Yeah, and you make a choice. I think for companies that have got lots of choice, you know, we could invest here or there or in another country, it might be a factor. But then does the other country present such a good investment potential?
The same opportunities.
With the same opportunities.
Yeah.
With, you know, a market of 40 million and growing, and a very young market and a very demanding market. So, you know, it swings and roundabout, and they must take a solid business decision. I think that's the important thing, and sometimes it will be worth it and sometimes it won't.
Mm-hmm. What about the problem of bureaucracy? We know a lot of British investors have complained about that, this problem, or foreign investors as a whole. What do you think about the bureaucracy problem in Algeria for the time you've been here?
Do you know a businessman who doesn't complain about bureaucracy? I mean, my government is very alert to bureaucracy as a business limiting problem, and we put an awful lot of effort into trying to reduce unnecessary regulation and the burdens on companies, and still our companies complain. So in a way I think it's one of those helpful components of public life where companies strive to get the bureaucracy down, and governments who have other policy priorities weighing in them create bureaucracy to achieve other goals, which are not necessarily about the delivery of business. And that's a tension that is natural. I think as citizens, we hope that bureaucracy will be reduced. But again, every country's got bureaucracy. And some of the most successful countries in the world economically have appalling bureaucracy. So, you know, it's another of the factors that is part of life's rich tapestry. And we all want less.
Certainly, Your Excellency. On another topic, the Ministry of Industry has conducted several reforms on the investment code, and the Minister of Industry has announced that it has reduced the paperwork needed for new companies to open up their branches here in Algeria from, I understand, from 84 to 10, which is a significant decrease. What do you think about that?
Well, I don't know the detail of that, but if that's what's been achieved, that's fantastic.
Do you think that would help British investors?
I assume so. I don't know. Yeah, I assume it will.
Mm-hmm. How important is it, Your Excellency, for British companies to recruit locally trained people? So those who succeed to come here. Is it important to recruit locally trained people, or is there some training programs for transfer of knowledge, which is a very important issue with Algeria? We need to have more knowledge transfer to our working force.
No, and I think that skills transfer is a part of almost every negotiation that I'm aware of. The government has made very clear that that's what it wants to see. I went to the inauguration in October of an international training centre in Hassi Messaoud, run with a joint venture partner by KCA Deutag, which is a Scotland-based company, on drilling in the oil industry. That's absolutely about skills transfer. I know that Petrofac here have established an engineering school where they are helping to deliver the sorts of specialised workforce that they need. And I had a visit from a Scottish university yesterday who are in negotiations about setting up a whole academy. There's a vocational training establishment called TVET UK who look to have an announcement also on the 10th of December. So I think that sort of skills transfer and especially for young people, but not only, is a very, very alive part of the British package in Algeria.
Mm-hmm. Your Excellency, what about the other way around for Algerian young entrepreneurs who want to export their goods to the British market, especially with the recent law that now allows Algerian investors to bring their money outside and invest abroad? Would the British market be a good choice for Algerian entrepreneurs? And would their goods have a market in Britain?
Well, in principle, yes, but it's quite a difficult market. I mean, it's a very developed market with a huge amount of competition in very particular economic circumstances. So I suspect that the costs of running a business in the UK are quite high, but there's absolutely no reason why not, and I look forward to it happening.
Hopefully it would.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, and startups. I mean, a lot of young people are making some very big inroads with very imaginative proposals, and the e-industries in the UK, especially around something that we call Tech City in the East End of London. I think there are young people from all over the world establishing businesses there, which often have very few members of staff, but it's actually the vitality of their imagination that they're able to commercialize. I would say, I think Algeria needs its young people and its new industries.
Its own country.
So if I was actually given the choice, I would say probably better to stay in this country and do it. I mean, I think,
Why not both, Your Excellency?
Well, yeah, but if it's a small startup, I'm not sure that's realistic to suggest that they've got that. One of the things as a relatively new arrival in Algeria that I would say to them is, remember, it's quite a difference not having sunshine.
Yes, indeed.
I think quality of life is something to bear in mind. And we've got lots of theatres and concerts and lots of established leisure industry. And we've got parks in our cities and all of that sort of thing. But weather, think about weather.
I don't think that would be a deterrent factor, having said that.
I think it probably should be.
We'll see. Your Excellency, moving on to another topic, with the fall in oil prices that we've seen recently and the instability of the oil prices, would that affect British investment, even in the hydrocarbon sector?
I don't know. I think you would need a very expert economist in front of you to answer that question. I think it's quite easy to make some superficial and rather simplistic conclusions. I read somewhere during the week about Algerian gas sales to a particular country that all such fears were pretty groundless since it was on a fixed price contract. So I look forward to, I hear lots of opinions. I try and sort of put them together and see what is more likely to happen. But I'm not sure that I've heard an awful lot of comment that has been helpful. I hear a lot of confidence within the oil and gas sector here. I think the return of Shell as a partner in Algeria is significant. I think other companies who've decided to extend their level of investment in Algeria is another demonstration of confidence, and it remains an area where British specialists are very keen to be engaged. So my own superficial conclusion is that there's no problem, but it's clearly, as an oil-producing country ourselves, it's better in terms of the return to have a higher oil price. When we're buying things, or for industry costs, it's better to have a low oil price. So quite what the balance is, I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that input, Your Excellency. Now let's move on to the political side of the bilateral relations. Would you say that, can we say today that Algeria and the UK have a strategic partnership in terms of the fight against terrorism in the Sahel region?
Absolutely, absolutely. And we've had a third round of our strategic security partnership talks that was started by the President and the Prime Minister last year. And we have had thorough discussions of our internal challenges, the external challenges, and that very much for us includes the really excellent leadership that Algeria is providing in the search for a peace settlement in Mali. But we have talked a lot about Libya and the challenges that Libya presents. We've discussed the very significant support that Algeria is giving to Tunisia as Tunisia emerges into a much more confident place. And we've talked about challenges such as foreign fighters and the atrocious events in Iraq and Syria linked to ISIL. So those are all areas on which we find that dialogue between Algeria and the UK is a very natural and important relationship to build on.
Mm-hmm. Would you describe Algeria as a stable country in the light of the instability surrounding it, notably in Libya and Mali?
Without a question.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Good. Your Excellency, about the illegal immigration file now, I know there are pending issues and it's a recurrent issue of illegal immigration. Would you say that it is a problem, if any, or would you say that it would hinder the strategic dialogue between Algeria and the UK?
I mean, illegal immigration is a problem, but which sort of illegal immigration?
Illegal,
of whom to where?
Algeria in the UK, Algerians in the UK.
I think, I mean, there are individual migration policy issues that we discuss with the Algerian government, and some of them relating to people, Algerian citizens who've committed crimes in the UK. That's an issue we talk about, and it's not always straightforward. I don't think there is a significant level of illegal immigration of Algerians into the UK. There must be some, but I don't think the numbers of it. I mean, Algeria is not in the list of the most offending countries in that respect.
Good.
I mean, it's an interesting topic because some of the worst offending countries transit through North African countries, and yes, I think there's more of a pattern of people going through Libya, and from what I understand, the Algerian government has taken quite a lot of steps to ensure that illegal immigration does not start from Algerian shores, and we welcome that very much. Eritreans are a big source of illegal immigration into the UK, but I don't think they're coming through Algeria. So, you know, the management of illegal immigration is certainly a subject where we're very grateful for the Algerian government's efforts.
Mm-hmm. If you may, Your Excellency, let's talk about the Pritikin file. Can we say there is a pre-Pritikin, post-Pritikin era in the British-Algerian relations?
Well, you can say that if you like, but I'm not entirely certain what one would deduce from that.
We know there's been some controversy about the way the Algerian army and government handled the situation. Was there, between brackets, a crack in the Algerian-British relations after the Pritikin incident, or did we move away from it? Is it a thing in the past now?
You know, UK and Algeria, big countries, long terrorism problems. I think one of the things I feel is incredibly important to note is that terrorism comes from tiny groups of people who want to intimidate the whole of the society. What's the best reaction to somebody who wants to intimidate you? Actually, it's to continue with what's important if you're a government, which something that's important for the whole country. And what did we see at In Amenas? I mean, it's a tragic and cowardly attack which cost the lives of far too many people and implicated many others who were taken captive, and the impact that had on their families. I mean, a tragic and terrible event. Were Algeria and the UK going to be knocked off their relationship as a result of it? Far from it. And one of the things I think we demonstrated is that we won't have our relationships dictated to us by terrorists. The Prime Minister came here, in a way not perhaps the reaction one would expect. You know, we just lost British citizens in a terrorist attack here, and the first serving British Prime Minister ever to visit independent Algeria made his first visit. Hallelujah. And from that, President Bouteflika and David Cameron set out a bilateral agenda for the expansion of relationship. So you could talk about pre-In Amenas and post-In Amenas, but in fact, if one started from an assumption that pre was better than post, it would be completely the other way around.
Mm-hmm. So which is good.
So I think before it was plodding along, since it's had real energy and a real sense of purpose from the top of both governments.
Mm-hmm. Good, excellent.
That's fantastic. I mean, and there's so much to achieve.
Mm-hmm. Hopefully it will be achieved in the nearest future. Your Excellency, on another topic, how do you evaluate Algeria's human rights situation?
Well, we've just had a visitor here who is the head of the Human Rights Department in the Foreign Office. And he wasn't here for a long time, but he had a very packed 30 hours programme. We went to see the Minister of Religious Affairs. We called in the Foreign Ministry and the Justice Ministry. He met a number of international organisations and quite a large number of NGOs. And he went away understanding human rights issues in this country far better than he had been able to do from the outside. One of the things that he was able to say was that the Algerian position on the abolition of the death penalty was something that he was very pleased about. You know, the length of the moratorium that has existed since 1993 is excellent. We, as the British government, would hope over time that the Algerian government felt itself in a position to abolish the death penalty. And we are in favour of the abolition of the death penalty under all circumstances. So that's an area, I would say, where there is still something to be done, but actually the position that has been reached is a very laudable one. I think we understand also that Algeria as a post-conflict country and one in which peace and stability and the unity of the country is very much at the forefront of the government's agenda to maintain it after such a dreadful experience in the 90s. It is very understandable. And the way people talk to me about the progressive move towards parliamentary democracy is something that I want to do whatever we can to help in that process. And to advance the cause of that particular component of human rights. But none of us are without flaw. We can all do better. And I think what I see in Algeria is a country that is very clear about how it wants to improve human rights, but that is already at a very high level. I'm truly impressed by the freedom of expression in the media. If there are taboos, well, I think you have to look very hard to find them. I know there are issues about the availability of advertising funds and all of that sort of thing. There will always be issues. The most important thing is to keep that going forward. And we as an embassy want to help all of those positive trends that we see already.
Mm-hmm. Good, that's excellent. To another topic now, a lighter topic, English language in Algeria. We know that the British Council is working a lot with the Algerian Ministry of Education as well as higher education, and is doing a lot on the ground to promote English language teaching and learning. My question to you is, how do you evaluate the English language in Algeria Could you possibly see Algeria transforming into an English-speaking country in the nearest future?
Well, if I may say, without embarrassing you, you give a very good answer to that yourself.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
As I'm sure do the viewers to this interview.
Thank you.
It seems, from what I understand of Algeria's recent past, there is already a very significant improvement in the level of English as is spoken here. And what the British Council is doing is promoting that acceleration and that achievement of quality. And it's really important to do so because the rest of the world speaks English very well. It is demanding and it's not an easy language. But the sort of, I mean, I've learnt quite a lot of languages as a British diplomat. The one language I failed to learn before I joined the diplomatic service was one for which I didn't actually have a real motivation. And I think what I hear in Algeria is a very strong motivation and a very clear set of reasons why. And I think my experience is that if you've got that sense of motivation, you will achieve it. And I think the means that are available to young people these days,
the internet.
Exactly. You know, so many people who are good English speakers that I talk to, I say, you know, how did you get to be so good? A lot of them say, well, listening to songs.
Yes.
Well, listening to songs 5 years ago is, I think, the internet of today and tomorrow. I'm beginning to think that if we want to do something for English, we actually ought to see what we can do about getting more and more people to be very familiar with using the internet. Because I think internet usage is still at quite a low level in Algeria, if my information is correct. So I think, you know, in English, as in so many other areas, Algeria is in a stage of very fast development. And I think in 5 years' time, I think we'll be able to look back. You know, 5 years in the life of a person is quite a high proportion. And somebody who's 13 now, well, the sort of English language journey that they could go on between now and 18, by the age of 18, they could be really quite good.
It's true. It's true.
Inshallah.
Inshallah.
We have to say.
We have to,
Touch wood.
obviously. Obviously. Your Excellency, before I give you the final word, what would you like to have achieved ideally by the end of your mission to Algeria?
I would like to feel that my countrymen and women feel that they know Algeria better. I think.
Do you think there's a problem of branding in Algeria? Does Algeria know how to brand itself?
I think there needs to be much more communication about Algeria. Although the fact that people know so little, it means that every single visitor from Britain, without exception, when those aeroplane doors open, even then, they all say, oh, this isn't the country I was expecting. And you know, they haven't even got to the airport building. But the impression starts then, and it goes throughout their stay. It goes as they're driving into Algiers, as they check into their hotels. Every encounter they have with Algerians is actually a really positive thing. And sadly, they're not expecting it. And we just need to grow that, and we need to grow their reputation. Because this has been, for me, 6 wonderful months with so much to help deliver and working with really, really nice people. So, you know, if I was speaking to a British audience in the UK, I would say, you know, just
there's a chance that some British audience would be watching this interview.
Inshallah. You know, come and see for yourselves.
Well, I extend this invitation, Your Excellency. Final word?
I thought that was quite a good final word.
Well, that was a pretty good final
Algeria
word.
open for business. That's what we're going to be talking about next week in London. I'm looking forward to a deluge of follow-up next year. And I'm looking forward to travelling around Algeria. We've been so busy, I've done very little travel so far.
Oh, you have to do that. It's actually a pretty beautiful country.
No, I've got a list of where I want to go to most, and both professionally and privately. I'm looking, I suppose, I'm looking for opposites. I'm looking for wide open spaces, the stars.
Especially in the south.
The oases
the west,
sound amazing. I've seen a bit of the beaches. They've been great. But then getting into the urban centres and seeing what the things are about actually delivering the commercial relationship and the educational relationship, that's all very exciting indeed.
Well, you're most welcome here in our country, Your Excellency. Thank you so much for taking the time to sit with us today.
It's been a great pleasure. Thank you very much
It's
indeed.
been my pleasure.
Thanks
Thank
a lot.
you. And with this, ladies and gentlemen, we come to the end of our special interview with His Excellency Andrew Noble, British Ambassador to Algeria. Thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time, bye-bye.